Hello and thank you for joining me in this mind mastery video. I thought I'll make a short follow-up video on what I've been talking about in the previous video on interpretations and making sense of our experience. But this time I'd like to address sort of cognitive or perceptual distortions which might prevent us from making sense of our experience or seeing things in a distorted manner. And I know that there is a full list of cognitive distortions already created by psychologists. I'm going to post a link to it in the description. But I'd like to address this subject from a more practical perspective. So from a perspective that is perhaps slightly different to this official or academic psychology and psychiatry. So we know that cognitive distortions or perceptual distortions relate to the fact where we omit certain details in our interpretation of our experience, or we see things not quite as they are in the reality. So we distort them a little bit because it makes us more comfortable, for example, it makes us more safe, or it prevents us from seeing something that is very anxiety provoking, something that might be threatening to our ego and the coherence of the self. So in this video, I'm gonna talk about 4 ways in which we tend to distort our perception, tend to distort our narrative, our story, or simple interpretation of our experience. The first one is quite simple. It relates to this idea of black and white thinking. So basically seeing things in extreme manner. It's either this or that. It's basically contrary to this, balanced perspective. It's about going into extremes. So this is how things are. My opinion is the best. This is the right interpretation. This is how things are. This is the fact. And similar things that we might do as well. So it's basically, not seeing the gray area. It's not seeing the possibilities, the probabilities, but it's about going into extremes because it's more comfortable. It's like using the binary code, right? It might be easier and quicker and more efficient to use it than considering various possibilities, reflecting, or using some philosophy in order to determine the facts. And, seeing things in black and white terms, it's way easier and more efficient, way quicker way that enables us to make sense of our experience. And it usually manifests itself where we dismiss certain elements of our experience, of our interpretation. So where we jump to conclusions very quickly, where we say that this is how things are, and we end the subject. We move on to other things, and we are unwilling to reflect on, other possibilities and other probabilities. So in a way, the more certain we are of our opinion or what is happening to us, the more certain we can be that our perception is a bit distorted, because this certainty prevents us from seeing other possibilities, other perspectives. It prevents us from being open to other interpretations to our narrative. So my personal rule is to always leave at least 5% of uncertainty. So whatever I do in my life, whatever I interpret, whatever opinion I have, even if it's totally based on facts, even if it's something that I could be very certain of, the most I can be certain of it is 95%. I always leave this 5% of possibility that I might be totally wrong. And leaving this 5% enables me to, don't attach myself so much to what I think, to what I believe in, right? It enables me to remain open to other possibilities, to other perspectives, to other opinions. And that's how I can, develop understanding and widen my perspective. The second sign that our thinking might be a little bit distorted is ruminating. So basically going over and over again over the same ideas, over the same thoughts, over the same experiences, and trying to make sense of it. And I think the reason we do it is because we already know what happened. We already know what's going on. We already have the correct interpretation, or at least the interpretation that is as close to the reality as it can be, but we deny that it's true. So we look for other ways, we look for other possibilities, whereas our brain is offering us already the correct perception, the correct interpretation. But instead of taking it, we keep looking for other possibilities. So in a sense, I think it might be a manifestation of the denial, where our brain either has the correct interpretation already or is trying to make sense of our experience, but we are blocking this process. We are saying, no, maybe it's not true. Maybe there is something else. And then we are in this position of conflict because our brain says, no, here's the correct interpretation already. You know what is right. You know what is wrong. But you're saying, no, I'm going to look for something different. So it's like fighting with yourself over the right perception, over the right interpretation of what is happening to you or what has happened to you in the past or what you need to do. So as a result of this conflict, as a result of this denial, you keep ruminating, you keep moving over and over again the same details, the same data, the same memories, because you refuse to acknowledge that you already have the right interpretation. So it's like fighting with yourself. It's like being in conflict with yourself. And not admitting to yourself that the interpretation you're having is already correct. It might be very uncomfortable or anxiety provoking. That's why you're in the denial in the first place. So I think in terms of dealing with rumination, you need to practice radical honesty. So being honest with yourself, right? Because I think that I might be totally wrong, of course, but I think that the solution to rumination is simply being honest with yourself, simply acknowledging that you know the truth already. It's just a matter of admitting it to yourself. The next sign that we might have some cognitive distortions in our interpretation is dismissing certain things. So not caring about certain aspects of our experience, not caring about perhaps what happened to us or whether something is true or not, and just, being cynical or completely nihilistic about our experience or our beliefs or our opinions. So basically saying that nothing we say is important or nothing we think is important, nothing we do is really important. In other words, it's based on basically not seeing any value in our beliefs, in our opinions, or what we do, what we say, what happened to us. Basically dismissing the whole experience. And I think the reason we do it is because it's a way of avoiding responsibility. Because if we dismiss something, if we dismiss an experience, if we dismiss our opinion or some fact or belief that we are having, if we dismiss it, then we might avoid responsibility for it, right? So for example, if you lose something valuable, something very unique and valuable to you, and I offer empathy, but you say that you're not feeling really anything, then you're not really taking the responsibility for losing it, perhaps. That's one way of looking at it. So you, in a sense, you dismiss the importance of your feelings, you dismiss the importance of that thing that you've lost, you dismiss the importance of being attached to certain things in your life. Perhaps you're not attached at all, which is fair enough. But I simply brought this example just to illustrate the point I'm trying to make. So not caring about stuff, not caring about our experiences, not caring about making sense, and just letting everything go, like, nothing really matters in your life. Again, I think it's a representation of our inability or simply unwillingness to take responsibility for our actions and to what is happening in your life. And the last sign that we might be using these cognitive distortions, which is quite similar to the first point, is kind of not having this holistic perspective. So for example, using only our reason to make sense of our experience. So going into this extreme of intellectualization, where we only use logic and reason to make sense of what is going on with us and completely dismissing our feelings, or going into the other extreme of being, impulsive and allowing our emotions to dictate our decisions. So being overly emotional, whereas dismissing the reason itself. And I think that in this case, it might be a manifestation of the conflict that we are having. Perhaps we are not comfortable with our emotions. So it's very easy to go into the rational realm, right? Because then we don't have to deal with all that mess. Or perhaps we are more comfortable with our emotions, because when we start to make sense of our experience on this more logical or rational level, then we'll see how many mistakes we are making, or then we will see how irresponsible we are. So again, it's the kind of avoidance of the discomfort, perhaps avoidance of the responsibility as well. And doing so, going into these two extremes of either reason or emotions, will prevent us from seeing things in this holistic manner, because then you can't see the gray area. You are basically at the mercy of your reason or at the mercy of your emotions. So it's like not really having anything to say from your own place of awareness or ego at all. It's like, being thrown into these extremes, regardless whether you want it or not. And I think that the remedy to these cognitive distortions would be to simply pause before making decisions, before jumping to conclusions, and consult the other end. So when you feel compelled by your feelings or emotions to do something, take a moment and consult with your reason. See if it's really a logical thing to do, if it makes sense, if it's the right thing to do, if it's responsible thing to do, if it's going to lead you to the consequences that you want. And the same applies to the other extreme, when you tend to go into this more rational side and you dismiss your feelings, you dismiss how you feel, and you dismiss the kind of value that you place on various things in your life. Again, before making decisions, before jumping to conclusions, it would be worth to consult yourself, to consult whether it is really right, if it's the right thing to do, if it's something that you really want to do, if it's aligned with your desires, if it's aligned with your needs, right? Because if you go against yourself constantly, you're going to suffer consequences later on, because what we dismiss will persist in our life, will intensify it, and will simply build up constantly until you start paying attention to it. So obviously it's better to deal with it earlier than when it grows to this monstrous sizes where we struggle to deal with it. So that was my take on various cognitive distortions and signs that can help us to spot whether our interpretations are correct, whether we are jumping to conclusions prematurely. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you're interested in private coaching, don't hesitate to send me a message. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time.